When we talk about year-end fundraising campaigns, we often do ourselves a disservice of only talking about the asking tactics involved in our campaigns. The reality of successful fundraising campaigns is that they're really an ecosystem of more than just asking. And that's where content marketing comes in. In this tutorial, I'll walk you through how content marketing can support your year-end fundraising campaign and also offer you some helpful tips to execute your content well. Hey there, my name is Vanessa Lockshin, and I'm the president of the Storytelling Nonprofit. Welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into today's tutorial, I want to let you know about a free resource I have that can help you with your content and specifically your storytelling work. It's the Storytelling Success Checklist, and if you'd like to download your copy, there's a link just below this video in the description box to grab it. All right, let's talk content marketing. Content marketing is essentially a way for your nonprofit to promote its key ideas, its key messages, and also other thought leadership through various forms of content. Content marketing is a way to really engage your audience through various types of content and ideally cultivating them towards some set goal. For the purposes of this tutorial, we'll talk about that goal in terms of fundraising. So as you plan your year-end fundraising campaign, one of the pieces you can think about is how content can support your fundraising campaign in terms of how it engages your audience with the key ideas that are a part of your campaign that you're rolling out. For instance, you could share a series of stories on multiple platforms that relate to your ask, or you could maybe publish a series of non-ask emails that really build your campaign's narrative ahead of time and engage your email list. There are lots of possibilities. If you're thinking about how to creatively use content marketing as a part of your organization's year-end fundraising campaign, here are some of my tips for you. Tip number one, leverage your organization's content strengths. Let's be honest, there are a million types of content that our organization could be producing between white papers, Facebook posts, videos, emails, like the list goes on and on and on. There's just so many different types of content that we could be sharing with our audience. And I'm willing to bet that your organization is better at some of those than others. And that probably depends on your staff skill set, maybe even your specific strengths and skill sets. And it's really important and valuable to really leverage what you're great at. You don't have to be doing all the things all the time. And I think when it comes to really creating a strategic and focused content marketing plan for your year-end fundraising campaign, it makes sense to really leverage your strengths and put that at the forefront of your plan. Tip number two, go where your audience is. I give this advice all the time to people when it comes to storytelling and also in fundraising as well. It's so important to really think about where your audience is interacting with your organization because much like with content types, there are lots of different platforms you could be on. And it's valuable to think about where are you getting the most traction and most engagement with your audience? Where are people the most focused on what you're sending them or engaging with what you're sending them or sharing? And being able to really use those channels as key content channels for your organization during year-end fundraising. Tip number three, create content that ties into the ask you plan to make in December. This may seem like a no-brainer, but I want to talk about it anyways because I do think it's a really important piece of the puzzle. It's really easy to slip into, I would say, a phase where we can just be creating content for content's sake. And we do that oftentimes. Seth Godin will sometimes refer to this as like the heartbeat content, the things that we kind of keep doing to keep engaging our audience. But what we really want to do, to use Seth Godin's term, is create remarkable content from time to time that disrupts, kind of like pattern disrupts those heartbeats and engages people in new and different ways. And so when it comes to thinking about your fundraising campaign for December, it's really valuable to make sure that your content, the messages of that, are really strongly aligned with the messages that you want to get across in your fundraising asks for December. So as you're planning out your content, take the time to think about what makes sense and supports the goals that we have for our fundraising campaign and how can we really integrate these things more thoroughly. Tip number four, think about it as a conversation unfolding over time. I give this advice quite often to people when we think about fundraising campaigns, that it's really like a conversation that's happening over several days or several weeks. And I always think it's useful to think about this because when we think about kind of unrolling our message and getting out in front of people, sometimes it's tempting to just kind of like fire hose them with all the information all at once. But really what we're doing is we're taking them along a journey. And if people are engaged with this journey, which many are, and they continue to engage with us along this journey, along the path, we're really building up their engagement and their knowledge and their exposure to this campaign over a period of time. And so sending them the same messages, the same content time after time after time becomes less and less effective. What's more effective and more strategic is to think about how can we continue to kind of like build on this story and build on this conversation that we're unfolding. And so if you think about it that way, especially in terms of your content, You can think about what kind of content you're starting to share at the beginning of November and start to think about how is this building the conversation that we want to have in December? How is this leading people towards this larger conversation and ask that we'll be making then? Tip number 5, measure your effectiveness. I think this is such an important part of content marketing, and sometimes it's a little elusive and slippery to try to figure out how do we measure the effectiveness of content. But I think it's something worth doing, especially when we're thinking about what were the factors of our success in year-end fundraising. So if you're putting out content that's a part of your campaign, I would really encourage you to pick some metrics and some ways to measure whether or not it's working or what kind of impact it may have had on your audience. So those are my content marketing tips for you for your year-end fundraising campaign. I'd love to hear from you below in the comments. Let me know, how are you thinking about using content this year as part of your campaign? As always, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up here on YouTube and subscribe to my channel for more weekly fundraising and communications tips.